In this short demo, I want to introduce our AML tuning approach. When talking about AML tuning, we mean initializing and adjusting the parameters of the used scenarios to measure the impact on the number of generated alerts. In the first phase, you want to set the scenario parameters in such a way that alerts are generated correctly. Not too low, well then all transactions will be alerted, but also not too high because you want a certain amount of transactions to be alerted. After a certain amount of time, these parameters can be tuned with the knowledge gained from the alerts generated by these initial parameters. Additional information like a true or false positive indicator is useful when doing this exercise in a second phase. In what's coming next, I will show you an overview of the scenario's alert generation performance and two tuning examples. One for a scenario with a single parameter and one for a scenario with multiple parameters. Here you can see all the scenarios listed on the left together with the number of alerts they generate and their proportion in relationship to all the alerts generated. The colored gauge next to the alert percentage makes it easy to see if a scenario generates a high or low number of alerts, and the color thresholds can be set according to your preferences. For example, when you want the gauge to color red only when the proportion is higher than 30%, this can easily be done in the display settings. The bar chart on the right is a more visual representation of the same information and orders the scenarios based on their alert counts. This screen shows you how you can tune a single parameter scenario. On the left, we have a bar chart that visualizes the frequency of each value the parameter takes in our data. For example, we see that for this scenario, the parameter has 18 times the value of 100,000. Next to the bar chart, we have a gauge that shows the number of alerts for this scenario for a certain parameter value. When no parameters are used, all transactions for this scenario would be alerted, resulting in 158 alerts. Above this gauge, you see a slider where you can adjust the parameter value and see the impact on the number of alerts. For example, when setting the parameter to instead of 0 to 3.5 million, some bars will color red, indicating that those alerts will not be generated when using this parameter value. You can also see that the gauge is now pointing out another number, 34. This corresponds to the number of alerts that the scenario generates with this parameter value. Again, the color thresholds can be adapted according to your preferences. The scenario on this screen requires two parameters to be tuned. Therefore, we use another graph that is more suited to visualize the impact of parameters. We choose a scatter plot and assigned one parameter to the horizontal axis and the other one to the vertical axis. It's possible to tune scenarios with even more parameters, but starting from 4 parameters, visualization gets tricky. In that case, we first conduct an exercise using a decision tree to find out which 2 or 3 parameters are most important. Then, those parameters are used for tuning that scenario. The remainder of this screen is similar to the previous one, but now has 2 sliders because of the 2 parameters to be tuned. With the current parameters, transactions represented by a red dot would not be alerted. When changing, for example, the second parameter from 1 to 5, these 2 additional transactions would be neglected. This ends this AML tuning demo with our approach. As mentioned earlier, this exercise can be revisited after a certain period to further optimize the scenario's parameters with newly gained knowledge. If you would have questions or want further information, please feel free to get in touch.